Hello, and welcome to the Creative Career Change podcast with me, Hannah Ash. I make my living working simultaneously as a music teacher, an interior designer, a writer, a podcaster, and more. You can read more about me and my work on Substack. Visit shayhanny.substack.com. That's Shayhanny spelled Chezhanny. The focus of this series is on female multi-hyphenates. I've been interested in this concept ever since I read Emma Gannon's book, The Multi-Hyphen Method, several years ago, and these days I consider myself to be a multi-hyphenate. I'm keen to explore, through talking to other women, what real-life multi-hyphenate life looks like across the world, the joys, the challenges, and everything in between. Today, I am chatting to sales expert, best-selling author, and business mentor Sara Dalrymple. Sara, welcome and thank you for agreeing to chat to me today about all things multi-hyphenate life. Please, can you introduce yourself and give us a potted career history?
Hello. Yes, I certainly can. I'm Sara Dalrymple, and okay, potted career history. Well, I'm 43, so we're going back some. I'll spare you the teenage jobs and just get straight into what I started with after uni, which was somehow I started in investment banking, but maybe this is a good time to say I've never really known exactly what I want to do. And I feel like it's a whole journey, isn't it? That you don't necessarily know from the off. So anyway, I didn't really know what to do at uni. So I'd been cajoled into doing an economics degree. So typically what happens with an economics degree, or one of the things that happens, is you end up going and working in some sort of financy banking situation. So that's what I did to start with. And I stuck it out there for about a decade before retraining as a photographer. So then I became a photographer alongside banking for a little while, and alongside my first maternity leave. And then I started doing wedding photography, and then I sort of added in headshot photography. So for a while I was doing banking, weddings, and headshots, and then I eventually let go of the banking, the kind of reliable income piece, if you like, which I really felt obligated to hang on to for a lot longer than I maybe would now. But anyway, and then I was a fully fledged photographer for a few years, and then I became a business mentor, and then I became an author, and now I do less of the photography and more of the kind of business coaching, and kind of, I suppose, I've got some training programs and sort of education pieces as well.
When did you first become aware of the term multi-hyphenate?
Do you know what? It's one of those terms that I really couldn't pinpoint to an exact. I can't remember. The short version is I can't remember, Hannah. I don't know. I don't know exactly. But I feel like definitely over the last few years, it's been very much in my awareness, because there's also sort of, I remember squiggly careers being a bit of a thing.
Yeah.
I know it's not exactly the same.
Yeah, there's similar, I guess. Yeah.
Similar-ish, but I'll tell you what I do know, which is when I became one, I definitely didn't know it had a name.
Well, and I guess the other thing I was thinking earlier is that this term is maybe a relatively recent term, but I guess people called it like a portfolio career before, or
Oh, that's right. You're right. Okay, so when did I think it was about 2013 that I started adding more than one thing into the mix.
okay.
And even social media was not really a thing then. Like, there was Facebook. I think Instagram was just getting started, but so there wasn't really it's really easy to forget that there wasn't actually that much conversation out. So I really remember, because I remember being at my desk at work, just sort of literally getting on Google and being like, I really want to do something else. help, 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 Google. But it really wasn't. There's so much lovely advice and resources, and just you can at a sort of drop of a hat, you can get exactly what you need from the internet now. But there wasn't really as much of a thing going on then. So I feel like there were terms like portfolio career, but they definitely weren't in the kind of main. I feel like my experience was they're a tiny bit frowned upon. if I'm honest. I definitely remember having a thing about like, oh, I feel a bit of shame about my life choices because the general consensus in my kind of immediate friends and family was actually like, what? You're giving up a really good, like, well-paid job with like all the kind of whatevers to take pictures. Like it really was that sort of scathing. So I kind of kept, I just kind of got on with what I was doing, and I wasn't necessarily aware of what terminology or what there was kind of going on. But when I, as social media kind of became more advanced and easier to kind of find your people on, I was really glad to find out that there were other people doing it, and also that it was, a thing.
Yeah, and in many ways, it doesn't really matter, does it, what the
No,
name of it is and what it's called. And in sometimes people refer to like side hustles, don't they? But that always feels a little bit. I don't really like that kind of term in the same way. I don't know.
no, hustle. I don't really like the word hustle, to be
No,
honest. Not for me. So
no, exactly. So anyway, it doesn't really matter what we call it, but you're doing it, and you've been doing it for quite a while. And I'm quite interested in how you got into photography, because you said you were sort of Googling it, like, get me out of here. But how did photography, what was it about photography that kind of spoke to you
yeah,
and drew you
it's
in?
such a good question because actually it's not a particularly, I don't think it's a particularly well-trodden path from like banker to
No.
photographer. Although maybe it is, I don't know. I know there's certainly plenty of people in banking who'd rather be doing something else.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I total transparency. I really remember being, it could have been all manner of things. It was at that time where lots of people were setting up cake businesses. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
Baking, there was like the Hummingbird Bakery and lots of icing. I really just remember thinking, I've worked in sales. I know how to sell these kind of financial instruments that I don't necessarily massively like vibe with, but I know how to sell them. Just imagine what I like, how much more enjoyment I'll get out of selling something that I really like. So I just really remember being like, what do I actually like? What do I like? What do I like doing? And it wasn't it, like I said, I could have gone that I like baking, so it could have been the
Yeah,
cake.
yeah.
But I'd recently got married. Maybe that's why I was thinking about cakes and I was thinking about photos. But the photography thing came about because I've always really loved taking pictures, not at all as a kind of, I never thought about it as a job, but I was, at school, I was always the friend with like the camera in her bag, the quite big camera because I'm a dinosaur, but like, like the big old block of definitely not digital camera. Um, and I just had recently, like I said, I'd recently got married and got these wedding photos back that had absolutely been the best photos I'd ever seen of myself in my life because I am not a natural in front of the camera. And just the experience of having these photos that I loved so much, actually, like, sure, it was a great day, but like the main thing was I was just so happy to see myself not grimacing, and I hadn't known that half of them had been taken, but still they were great. I really just thought, oh, I really want to. I'd love to do that for other people that are camera shy. Like this is a thing that I am so into in this moment. And as luck would have it, my wedding photographer that I had chosen was this lovely guy, and he was part of a photographer training school. So I was able to quite quickly figure out that I could sign up for this year-long program and he would be one of my mentors. And that just felt like a real alignment because I was like, oh, I really like, I had such great experience with him and I love his photos. So actually, this feels like, yeah, this feels like something I want to do.
Yeah. No, that's great. And it's nice how it kind of sort of, you were looking for something and then this came about, I suppose, relatively
Yeah.
organically, because it was part of what was going on in your life at the
Yeah,
time. Yeah.
it definitely wasn't as kind of conscious as I want to be a photographer
No.
next, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But I was very much open to, like I said, it could have been something else. It just ended up feeling, yeah, it felt like a good option at that time. I really liked the idea of officially like retraining because, like I said, I may have had like a brick camera in my bag like 10 years prior, but I had never ever used an SLR, like a professional SLR camera in my life. And I'm the sort of person that really wants to, be well trained and
Yeah.
have there's no real qualification you can get to like become a professional photographer. In fact, plenty of people just pick up a camera and go,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a photographer now. But I definitely, especially I just had a baby, I really wanted to feel confident what I was doing. And I loved how thorough the program was, which I think kind of ultimately swayed my decision versus just randomly choosing something else where I just have to figure it all out by myself.
Yeah, and that makes complete sense. And you like relatively recently had your first book published. You've got copies of it behind you, which
I know I did.
brilliant. So More Sales Please, which I have read and I loved, and I have kind of been, made lots of notes and been steadily kind of trying to put some of those things into action. But can you talk us through a little bit about that process, but also what at this very moment the strands are that are kind of making up your work?
Yeah, sure. So the strands wise, um the book is written, it's out now. It's been out for 4 months. So in that sense, and I'm not at this moment writing another book, but I do really feel like I want to keep that space open for writing. I it's really sort of interesting to me that I have realized I don't want to stop writing,
Yeah.
maybe through the process of, yeah, I don't know, I'm not sure. I'm looking at creative writing courses right now, but anyway, all I know is there is space and that is being ring fenced for more writing. Sort of dipping my toe into Substack, it's not really yeah, very much, gingerly dipping my toe in. It's not even a routine sort of discipline that I've got right now. But so writing, although albeit I'm not at this point, I'm not exactly sure writing what right now, but I would love to write some fiction, I think, but we'll see. And I've got the main sort of piece that I'm working, that kind of makes up my working time right now, is this kind of business mentoring, helping, essentially just helping small business owners to make sure that they know how to make the sales they need to pay their bills in a way that doesn't actually burn them out. Something that's really become important to me through the process of writing the book, actually, as well, because having never written one before, it took a lot of time for me. I didn't just sort of razz it off.
Yeah.
I really,
Yeah.
much like with the photography, I was like, no, I need all the support, please. I need all the time. So it's really important to me, and this is kind of what the whole book's about, actually, that people can do what they need to do, sort of promotion wise, marketing wise. They know how to use social media, the internet, to actually help their buyers make decisions that feel right to them. So I would say, like, the main bit of kind of, as I say, my work life at the moment is, whether it's in one-on-one mentoring or across the programs that I run, the kind of main MO of my business is helping other business owners to actually get to a place where they're paying their bills as quickly as possible and doing it in a really sustainable way. There's various strands, like I said, with either, working with people one-on-one, working with people in small groups. I've got quite a lot of courses that I run. I run masterclasses. And then speaking is another thing that
Okay.
I've sort of taken, yeah, that I've added in, I guess, as another way, because I've worked out that I really love. I was thinking about this the other day, actually, and I realized the bits that really matter are the connection that I get from my work. So, my clients are amazing. I love the ongoing relationship that we have. I love the fact that so many people come back again and again and again. And it's so nice we having those conversations, like, in safe spaces.
Yeah.
But I really need time for creativity as well. So I really need, like, whether it's writing or the photography or whatever, just walking in the woods, thinking, like, I feel like my creative time for creativity is really important. And then, the speaking stuff, I get my energy from being around people. And sometimes, even though it's brilliant that we have Zoom and we can do so much, there's something really nice about in-person
Yeah.
events. And whether it's a speaking event or a retreat, we met on a retreat, didn't we? And
Did,
I
yeah.
just love, yeah, I love having those experiences in real life too.
And do you think also what you've allowed yourself in now the way that you're working is, and I know this is actually really important to you, is making space in your business, and that's something you promote for your clients as well. But it sounds to me, even though you're saying, oh, I've written a book, but I'm not actually writing one at the moment, it's
Mm.
really important that you carve out that space in your life, in your week regularly, to let that whatever that next book is or whatever that creative project is to kind of form itself in your mind, and you can't do it without the time or the space, can you? Well,
You
hard.
put that in such better words than I did. Thank you. That's exactly what it is. It's like I kind of know there's going to be more writing.
Yeah,
And yeah, I feel like with so much of creative, like so many creative projects, they don't just, randomly land in your lap. I mean, sometimes they do, and that's great.
yeah,
But it's so important to me for myself, but also for my clients, that no one's running a business that's like running them into the ground. Like I definitely did my time doing that in
yeah,
corporate. I do not want to set up a business where that's happening again. And yet, all too often, that is something that can be a sort of byproduct of not kind of managing your available time in a really boundaried way. So yeah, the further along I get into it, the more sort of borderline obsessed I become about talking about the fact that we all do have like different amounts of available time, different aspirations, what we do with our time, different demands on our time. So actually the most important thing is that we know what we want to do with it and that we're doing that.
yeah. And I think that's so important. And there's something I've become really acutely aware of in the past few months as well, because it's all right going from one thing to another, different career option. But if you just then find yourself in that kind of burnout space again in a different role, then what's the point?
What's the point? And we all know how to do that. We all know how to work hard. We all know how to burn out. We all know how to overgive, and we all
Yeah.
know how to like be people pleasing perfectionists. So it's about learning something new, which does get a bit harder.
Unlearning those skills in a
Yeah,
way,
or
isn't it?
realizing that is kind of the default
Yeah,
setting, unfortunately, that we were often
yeah,
kind of handed down or kind of gifted in terms of like what we learn in our
yeah.
formative years.
I think that's so true, because I was having a really interesting conversation with my mum a couple of weeks back. So she's retired, and we were talking about books and reading. She reads a lot. She's quite late to getting a Kindle, but she
Mm.
loves it.
Oh,
And
that's nice.
we were sort of talking about what she was reading. And then she said to me that she loves reading, but she only lets herself read at night when she goes to bed or when she wakes up first thing in the morning. She won't allow herself to like have any time in the day to read. And I was just like, that's ridiculous. You're retired. You've worked all those years, you've raised a family, whatever. Like,
Do you know, I bet there are so many people in that generation who feel exactly the same. And also not even, I don't even know why I said in that generation. Like I don't really know that many people in our generation who are like
yeah,
comfortably able to take themselves off. Oh my goodness, it's so funny that you say this, because now I'm really reflecting that only a couple of months ago, when I was madly in kind of book launch mode, so it must have been January actually, and I felt like I had a little bit more on my plate than I maybe wanted to, but it was fine because it was like that moment I was like, this isn't going to last, this is fine. Anyway, I was to drop the kids off at school, pegged it to my local coffee shop, had my laptop out, books, all the things like on the side, like madly, busy, which I don't love as a word either. And there was a guy opposite me. It was probably like, I don't know, 10 past 9 on a Wednesday morning or whatever. And he had his paper and he had his coffee and he was honestly the most relaxed person I've ever seen. It was probably, I can't, it was a little bit older than me, but I was just like, I remember just having to catch myself because I was like fully taken aback. I was gulping. I was literally just like,
yeah,
I want to be that guy. I want to be the guy that's sitting. He was probably in there for 2 hours. After a while, he got himself a little pastry, perfect. Then he like got himself, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I am fantasizing about in this moment about. I mean, it's something so simple as reading a paper on a Wednesday morning, but I was just
yeah,
like,
yeah,
because where are all the, or like sitting in your local park on a bench, just having a picnic in the middle of a day, like that. I'm here for that. That's the kind of space that I am like extremely available for. But for some reason, we feel like we've got to have an occasion or we've got to like earn it. So it's sad, isn't it? But I'm also not
yeah.
surprised that your mum said that, even in her retirement.
I know. And I was just trying to say, well, look, you do whatever you want.
Read
Like,
all the books.
nobody's
Yes,
nobody's
this is your moment.
who is judging you? Like,
Yeah,
I think it's kind of hardwired a little bit, isn't it?
totally.
And yeah, so I think it is really important that that spaciousness is there, particularly for anyone who is kind of pursuing creative things, and to be honest, for anybody, because we've all got creative strands to our
Yeah.
work in some respects.
Whether
And
we identify, whether we're using that terminology is another
yeah,
thing. But
yeah,
ultimately, I've never met a single, especially woman, I don't think I've ever met a single, person who identifies as a woman who isn't feeling a little bit harangued. And actually, woman or man, let's just make it a whole, like, there's just a lot going on, and it's never a bad thing to take a minute and
yeah,
just sit.
yeah. No, I totally agree with that. Have you got a favorite aspect to your work at the moment?
I like them. To be honest, I like them. I don't like to even just pick one thing for dinner, Hannah. I like to have a meze. I like so it's really difficult. My 8-year-old is always asking me, "What's your favorite this? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite, I don't know, TV brand?" I'm like, I can't pick one. I don't think it's very difficult for me to pick one,
But
but I
but
will
that's
say,
good.
yeah, it means, a little smorgasbord of options is what I like to, select different days, different moods, different things. But because I have like pivoted and navigated and sort of got myself to a place where I'm only really doing things that I like,
Yeah,
that was pretty intentional in the end, albeit, twists and turns. But I very much am enjoying the conversations that I'm having, well, kind of all over the place, but particularly in kind of the mentoring piece around how we can actually evolve out of being the business owners who aren't burning out for the kind of just, to get to whatever level they want to get to. And actually, I can completely see and understand why that happens so much. Like, people start businesses and they want to make them successful and they want to make them, work, and they want to prove to all these people that are like, oh, what you're doing, that it's going to work. But actually, like, and something that I talk quite a lot about is the fact that even like 50 years ago, women didn't really have like fair access to bank loans or credit cards or mortgages. So actually, like, participating in the way we earn money is still kind of new, like in terms of not just being
yeah,
grateful for whatever job or whatever amount of pay or whatever, that sort of idea that I think we are kind of all carrying around, of like, we should be able to just fit in and make this work and keep our heads down and prove ourselves by working hard. I think we're really evolving out of that now, which I am so here for, because we do genuinely in this moment have a fantastic opportunity to make work for us, or like do it on our own terms and do it without the burnout. So actually, I don't really know if I'm answering your question here, but that's definitely the bit that I'm enjoying the most in the moment as we speak, the conversation, or helping other people realize that if something is feeling a bit sort of bit burnouty, we can move away from that, and we should.
yeah. No, that's really good. And actually, you saying that it's really hard for you to pick one uh strand that's your favorite, it tells me that what you're doing is totally the right thing for you, because you're enjoying it all, and that's really important.
Yeah.
I love what you say about you've kind of evolved your work so that everything you do are things that you like doing. You've kind of got rid of the things that you don't like doing. And I
Well,
think,
I think it's an ongoing kind of thing that maybe will always be changing, but for
yeah,
sure, like, one thing we haven't mentioned is that I had a spectacular burnout of my own in, well, it was like after lockdown, when I'd been homeschooling young kids and the things and blah blah blah. Let's not go back there. But I'm definitely not sort of talking about this from a pious kind of, oh, never burn out. I know what it feels like. And one of the main reasons why I burnt out was because I built my whole business on, I think I was doing about 5 calls a day at that point, because I was so like, I love doing the calls and I love working with people in that way, that I just sort of did more of them. And it kind of really was sort of dragging me around rather than the other way. So even though I still do calls, I now probably I don't do more than 5 a week. So it's gone from, so that's what I mean about space. It's like I didn't have any space. I couldn't even really go outside, or like rushing around the block to just get my get my walk in. That is not long-term sustainable for me. So I think when I say like I really like all the bits, they haven't necessarily changed like what they are. It's not like I'm like, oh, forget it, I'm not doing that anymore. It's just more finding that balance that works for, us as individuals. And I realize, like, I'm definitely doing far too many calls with also young kids and, like, caring responsibilities, whatever. So there needs to be less calls, and I need to find some more space, and I need to make it work in a different way. I'll probably keep, trogging on down that path of look, but again a new thing of like, actually, oh yeah, whoops, who's in charge here, who's made this a thing, oh whoops, me, right, better change it. And also just having that permission to keep changing it.
Yeah.
I am a fiend for boundaries now, I must say, but not in a sort of negative experience kind of way. Always here for like the good experiences, but I know where there are leaks, and I'm very militant about like tightening them up.
I think that's really important because it's so easy for all of that stuff to just get a bit out of control, and you've got to have that um those boundaries.
Well, I think it's like that service thing. Anyone that's got a service business is like, we are in service, we want to serve, we want to please. It really brings out all our like little people pleasing things that kind of go on. And actually, as a small business owner, especially if you're a small business owner of one, there's plenty of opportunities for your time to get squandered on things because you don't want to tighten up boundaries. And actually it just isn't really you get to a place where you realize it just isn't really that helpful for either party where there are leaks. So for example, I used to do headshot sessions and they were an hour, but I would travel like anywhere in London to do, so maybe sometimes I was traveling for like nearly 3 hours bananas because I'm like right in northeast London. It would take me a whole day to do one shoot, and that didn't even include any of the editing or like, the pre-so it was basically taking me like 4 days by the time I had done all the prep and sent all the guides and I don't know if you have anything similar, but it's this kind of thing that's like, hang on,
Yeah,
this needs to be sorted out. I need to be in a spot centrally, and people, I need to do a whole day of them, and that's perfect. And I can do them in like various, northeast, south and west, but I don't need to be doing like all this travel. This is not very sustainable. Things like that.
yeah. So it's that kind of making sure you're constantly reflecting on what's going on and how it is making you feel, so you can make those changes along the way, I guess, is quite.
Yeah, exactly. But also helping your clients to see that, I think there is a lot that goes on where we sort of tell ourselves, oh, but will that look bad if I say I won't travel to, I don't know, Reading or something but actually it's just like, let me just explain why, or then I'm going to have to charge more or whatever. Like, we can just make this a really easy conversation that maybe just comes with having a bit more years or a bit more confidence around, enforcing boundaries as well. It's not a bad thing, it's actually a good thing. And now people tell me all the time, oh, I'm so glad that you're actually like so clear about what the boundaries are, or like how to use this space, or what to put where. So it is genuinely a good thing. If anyone, in case anyone was listening to this thinking, oh, I'm a bit scared to, tighten them up, I highly recommend it, because, as a small business owner, your energy is the most important thing you've got. So you've got to make sure it's firing, and that you've got time to rest and be creative and do the things, because no one wants to hire the person that's knackered. That's the other thing. I realized, like, if I'm really honest with myself, do I really want to be like, does anyone want to pay money to the service professional who's like behind the scenes absolutely exhausted because they haven't given themselves any space to rest? I don't think so.
No, I think you're absolutely right. But everybody wants to, all clients want to see you at your kind, what they see as the best version and the most energetic version, and the one that's going to give them whatever it is that the product or the service that they're looking for. And I think that's a very important thing to consider, I would say. And which leads me on quite nicely to the next question, which is, we've probably covered some of them, but what do you see as some of the challenges of multi-hyphenate life, or having different strands to your career?
Challenges, I don't know about challenges. I guess making sure you're really clear about what available time you've got, and making sure that the balance maybe is like not tipping too far into one and then there's no time for the other, or that's probably one that I've definitely struggled with in the past, but now less. That's a challenge that can, become a bit of a minefield, because with any sort of self-employed, or not actually, if you're doing more than one thing, a risk, I guess, and therefore maybe a challenge, is always feeling like you've got to be doing something, or you should be doing something, or there's something else that could be done, which again, I really am, evolving out of that mentality, because I just know it's, for me at least, and I know for lots of other people, like we're not trying to fit in all this stuff for like 6 months and then realize, oh, it's too much, I can't do it, I'm going to go and, I don't know, work in my local whatever because it seems more simple. I want this to be what I'm doing forever, like not necessarily like without additional change or evolution, but it's a real long game. So and it is kind of a game in that sense. So it's like, okay, this bit isn't feeling quite right. What needs to change? So I think like from a challenge, what challenges about having, multi whatever strings to your bow is potentially to do with managing that time or having permission, giving yourself permission to have like plenty of space to not be doing anything, even when there's lots of things that you could be doing or want to be doing, to make sure you are recharging.
Yeah, that makes complete sense to me. And my final question is, if there's somebody listening who maybe is working in a corporate job or perhaps in banking or something similar, and they're kind of, listening and thinking, oh my God, I'd love to do something else, but I don't know what, or don't know how to do it. Do you have one piece of advice that you would, looking back maybe at your yourself in that situation, that you would give to someone?
Yeah, well, the great news is it is a lot easier now to find advice or find resources or information or hear stories from people who have already made that transition. And I would very much encourage like finding somebody who you feel like has done something in a way that you would like to do it, that you can ask questions to, for sure. But also just in terms of like figuring out, we don't have to have it all figured out. Like I know definitely for me it was this whole thing where I was like, oh no, but I've done this whole degree and I've done all these years in this thing. Like I had this real sense of like starting at the bottom, or like, as I said, there's kind of a lot of like not amazing energy coming at me for my decision. So I really was like telling myself it would be like starting again. But the reality is that was not the case. There was so much that I brought with me from what I'd already done, that you're never actually starting again. And also, you don't have to have it all figured out because things are continually change. We're all human beings, we're not robots, so we're all changing. The backdrop is changing, the economy is changing, everything is changing, seasons of life are changing, so you need different things at different points. So I would just say to focus on, what do you want to do next for the next 6 to 18 months? I mean, that's a bit specific, isn't it? Let's say 1 to 2 years. Trusting that process, that as long as you're being led by your own intention around doing something you love, because no point jumping into something else you don't love, or adding in something else you don't love. It gets to be as simple as finding more time to do something you enjoy and trusting that the rest will figure itself out, because it always does.
Yeah, I think that's really, really good advice, because I certainly a few years back fell into that trap of like not being able to see the immediate future, but always just thinking, oh, but I need a really secure job for
Yeah,
what? I don't know why,
we
but
all have this, don't we, where we're like, well, yeah, I need them,
yeah,
what's going to happen?
yeah. But actually, once you cut out of that, you can kind of realize that nothing. I mean, obviously, there's certain things that have to be kind of in order. You have to be able to pay your
Yeah,
bills or your mortgage or
of
whatever.
course,
But
please do that.
but
Yes.
equally, there's a lot of extra stuff that can be kind of worked around and worked with, and the next 5 years don't need to be mapped out perfectly
No.
clearly, do they?
And something else that really comes, I wish somebody had said to me at any point in my in my formative years, is that actually when you're actually doing things in alignment, or things that you find joy in, or that you have a natural level of ease around, not ease because you've worked really hard to figure out what you're supposed to be doing, but ease because it is just one of those things that you enjoy and that you can do maybe a little bit easier than the next random person. It Things take a lot less time.
Yeah.
So like I remember really having to work so hard at certain, what it's like, even at school, like there's certain subjects you have to work so hard to just fathom. Maths for me, I was just like, my God, I'm having to work so hard to just figure out the answers to this thing. Whereas words or writing or whatever, not so hard. Of course, there are people like in the classroom who are equal and opposite, but my point is, leaning into what's easier for you actually is a real space giver and does actually give you a lot of time back. And we all have so many skills and so many things that we can do, or natural points of ease, if you like, all you have to do is pick one. It almost doesn't really matter which one, and just follow that thread and see where it takes you. And like you say, the rest, you don't have to have it all figured out, but you just have to trust that doing that is enough to get you a bit more clarity that will then send you to the next bit.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's really, really nice to chat and for you to share your wisdom. Can you just remind everyone about your book?
Oh, I would gladly do so. So it's called More Sales Please, and it's written for the small business community, with the specific intention of making, like I said about, we want to make sure you're paying your bills in as quickly, as least time as possible, because when it comes to promoting yourself online, this is something that can really get people stuck for years, or get people like spending too much time on for a really long time and not necessarily for any given return. So I want to make sure if you are online in any capacity, the time that you're spending is no more than 30 minutes. Like, I never want anyone spending more than 30 minutes online, because it isn't really a great use of your time. But we want to make sure that the 30 minutes that you are there, you're giving your clients like exactly what they need, so that they can make easy, empowered, informed buying decisions. So it's essentially a book about how to increase your sales in 30 minutes a day.
Amazing. And I'll put a link to it in
Oh, thank you.
the show
Thank you so much
notes.
for having me on. It's been an absolute dream.
That was Hannah Ash talking to Sara Dalrymple about life as a multi-hyphenate. If you want to find out more about Sara, check out the links in the show notes. And if you enjoyed this episode and aren't already subscribed, visit shayhanny.substack.com to sign up and receive new episodes direct to your inbox. I hope you'll join me again for the next episode of the Shay Hanny podcast, featuring another inspiring woman living the multi-hyphenate life. Until then.